I want to describe something to you and I want you to tell me if this sounds familiar. So you're in a trade and you take a loss. And it's not a huge loss, but it's big enough where it kind of hurts. And then instead of closing your laptop and being done for the day, you take another trade. Not because the setup was there or you had an entry that was justified, but because in your mind you're like, I can't end the day red. And then that trade loses and then you take another and another. And next thing you know, you've wiped out your entire week's profit. And then you sat there being mad at yourself, realizing that you've just paid yet again for the same lesson that you've already paid for 100 times. That is revenge trading. And it doesn't matter how good your strategy is. If you're always trading to get even instead of trading to follow the plan. And in this video, I'm going to give you 3 tactics that I personally use to master my emotions that go beyond just be more disciplined. And these 3 things are things that I have not seen any other trading educator talk about. So let's get into it. So before we get into the method, I want to tell you about my specific pattern with emotional trading because everyone has slightly different behaviors and what emotional trading looks like. But for me, my biggest one was taking profit too early. So I would see the trade start to go in my favor. And then when there's a slight pullback or when I was in the red, the next time the trade starts to reverse to be in profit, I would take profit and I would end up walking away with like $10, $20. And the worst part was most of the time when I took profit early, the trade would actually end up running in my favor and winning. And here's what I realized when I started tracking my emotional trading was that I was more pissed off whenever I took profit early on a trade that would end up running to TP than I was whenever I lost the trade but I stuck to the plan. If I was getting stopped out on a trade but I let it run, I'd be like, okay, it's part of trading. But if I took profit early on a trade that could have went all the way to my TP, that would leave me pissed off because I knew every time I close a trade like that I was closing it for the wrong reason. This is an emotional pattern. Every trader has it and you cannot fix it until you identify your exact emotional pattern. And that's where we start. So the first thing that I want you to do is keep a trade diary. Now, of course, you've heard this before because every educator tells you to track your trades, but most people are only journaling the ticker symbol that they traded, whether they went long or short, and whether the trade worked out in their favor. What I want you to do is go one step deeper than that. So I want you to write down your specific emotions as you entered the trade. Did you justify it knowing that you shouldn't have entered? Did you only enter when you were following all your rules? Did you hesitate so you kind of missed the entry and you got a later entry than you wanted, or you missed the move altogether because you hesitated before you entered the trade, before you clicked that button to buy or sell? Were you bored? Were you anxious? Were you excited? Did you feel a sigh of relief like, wow, I'm actually making progress because I placed a trade? And even during the trade, what are you thinking in your head? When the trade is in the green, do you feel like you wanted to move the take profit even further? Do you notice yourself adjusting the stop loss every time price moves? And after the trade, how did you feel? Did you take profit early, like one thing that I always used to do? Did you trail your stop loss too early just to get stopped out in a slight loss when it could have won? The key point is you're not just journaling what happened, but you are journaling your emotions and how you felt during the trade. And so over time, you can start to build that self-awareness on what emotions impact your behavior. For me, when I started doing this, it was so obvious in 2 weeks, where every time I took profit early, it was because I was like midway through the week and I wasn't making as much progress that I wanted in terms of dollar amount. So my thought process was, I'd rather lock in profits than risk having the trade reverse against me. But I want you to think of it like Google Maps. In your Google Maps, every time you get in your car and you're about to drive somewhere, you always put in your destination. You don't just drive around aimlessly. And in trading, if you want to stop letting your emotions get in the way, you have to first identify specifically what type of emotional trading you fall victim to the most. Because someone who's a revenge trader and they just love pressing buttons and justifying entries needs a completely different solution from someone who's more fearful and they always hesitate. And so they miss trades and they miss good setups. And you won't be able to find a solution until you can identify specifically what is the emotional trading that you're most prone to. Now, the second thing is something that I haven't seen any other trading educator talk about. And I want to speak specifically to the women watching. And that is knowing how your period or your cycle impacts your trading decision. So if you're a woman and you track your period, then likely during the ovulation phase, you love yourself, you're glowing, your skin is great, you love everyone, you're overconfident. But did you know that that same level of overconfidence could, I'm not saying always, but could carry over into your trading behavior? So studies have actually shown that during the ovulation phase, women tend to be less risk averse. How does that show up in trading? That means that, again, not always, but you want to keep a diary and track. During this time of your period, are you more likely to take bigger risk size? Are you more likely to justify setups? Do you tend to go for a slightly bigger risk reward even though that's not justified in the price action? Maybe you're entering trades that don't fully meet your criteria just because you have that itch to press buttons and enter a trade. Maybe you even sometimes risk a bigger dollar amount than you should just because you want to see a huge green number on the screen. Now, I personally caught myself in this phase of my period taking trades that I had no justification for, feeling completely justified in the moment. All because I was feeling myself and I was like, I'm glowing during the stage. So I felt like on top of the world, like I was the best trader in the world, when clearly I wasn't. It was just my hormone. On the flip side, during your luteal phase, as we know as women, is when we hate the world. It's like we're so sensitive, we're depressed, we just want to stay at home and curl up into a ball and like our face is puffy and our hair is greasy. How does that carry over into trading? Well, if you're more fatigued and you're more emotionally sensitive during this phase, you may find yourself doing the opposite. This is when your fear might be heightened. Maybe you do see a good setup, but you're more protective of your account, so you hesitate and so you miss the move. Maybe you keep deviating from the plan and you're moving your stop loss, or you're taking profit early because you're catastrophizing what could go wrong if the trade doesn't play out in your favor. Of course, as women, neither phase is bad, but you want to start to build the awareness for how when you're ovulating or when you're in your luteal phase, that may affect your trading behavior, and that might bleed through into being more prone to certain emotions like fear and greed. So here's what to do with this. You want to track your cycle along with your trade diary, and over time you'll be able to see the pattern. Like in your ovulation phase, are you more likely to risk too much relative to your account balance? Are you more likely to overtrade and revenge trade? And during your luteal phase, are you more likely to take profit early, or are you hesitating even when the chart presents a perfect setup? And once you see certain behaviors, that's when you can implement certain strategies or rules to try to counter those behaviors. So let's say during your ovulation phase, depending on your strategy, you might set a maximum daily loss limit so that if you lose beyond a certain amount, you physically cannot take any more trades for the day. Same with in your luteal phase. In your luteal phase, if you tend to second guess yourself, then what you can do is slightly shift your goal. So instead of aiming for a specific dollar amount, a win for you would be, I made a decision to either go long or short for the day, provided that there was a good setup. And a win for me is taking that trade and placing the order, even though I accept the fact that it feels scary. Now, step 3, and this is probably the one I get the most surprising reaction to whenever I talk about it, and that is to build a trading alter ego. So here's where the idea actually came from. Earlier on, when I just quit my 9 to 5, I was still someone who was very shy. I was very quiet, I was very awkward, but building a business required me to do sales, and sales required me to have a certain level of leadership, charisma, be able to talk to people. Especially as a fresh graduate, I was like 23, 24 years old, and I had to try and sell these like CEOs and people in senior positions for my business. So just for background, my first business was a fitness coaching business, and I was trying to sell high-end packages to executives and CEOs, and that required me to step into another version of myself, a version that was confident, a version that wasn't intimidated by people that were making more money than me. So I came across this book called Alter Ego, and it basically explains how identity is the highest driver of behavior. So if you are able to step into different versions of yourself, then you can essentially create different identities of yourself that can control different behavior or bring out certain personality traits. So instead of telling yourself to just act differently using sheer discipline, you are focusing on becoming another person entirely and then stepping into that identity when you need it. Now, I know a lot of people who implement this. For example, one of my friends said that he once coached a guy for fitness, and this guy was juggling being an entrepreneur and also being a father. And every time he stepped back into his home, he would physically put on a different hat or change something about his outfit, and that would be his reminder to step into a father instead of a businessman. So in trading, how do we use the same concept? First, you want to create an alter ego that is specifically for trading. So what is her name? What does she look like? How does she dress? How does she think? And then write down on a document exactly what this version of yourself looks like. And what you're doing during this stage is literally creating a separate identity just for every time you trade. Next, you want to create a physical trigger or a trinket that every time you put on, it symbolically says to yourself, okay, it's time for me to step into this version of me. That could be a necklace, it could be a hat, it could be a specific routine that you do right before New York session or whatever session you trade and you start your day. Whatever that thing is, it becomes the ritual that helps you embody this trading version of yourself. And I know this might sound too simple or maybe even kind of cringy, okay? But the reason why this works is because it externalizes the standards that you have. It's not just you trying through sheer motivation and discipline to be less emotional when it comes to trading. It's you stepping into a character that already embodies those traits. And if you still don't believe me, then let me just cite one of the most famous psychology studies called the Stanford Prison Experiment. In this experiment, what they did is they had regular people dress up as either prison guards or prisoners. And they found that within a few days, these were regular people. They were literally acting as if they were prisoners or prison guards. And this was so powerful that within days, they had to end the study early because there was too much violence. So all that shows is that stepping into certain identities is one of the highest drivers of certain behavior, which means that if you can create an identity or an alter ego of what the trading version of yourself is like, then instead of relying on sheer motivation or just becoming more disciplined, you will naturally be able to possess the talents and the discipline of a good trader. Now, there's one more thing that I want to add, and that sits on top of all of these. And that's once you know the emotional behaviors that you are most tempted to give into, what you can do is create 1 or 2 affirmations around these that you read every time before you trade. So mine, earlier on, I told you that my biggest downfall was taking profit too early. So I walk away with like $10 or $20 profits here and there. What I did was create affirmations or reminders around this behavior. So my specific affirmation was that I am more mad at myself taking profit early than I am losing a trade. I trust my plan and I let the trades run, and I don't touch my stop loss or take profit until the trade is over. Again, it sounds simple, like it can't possibly make a difference. And if you're not used to journaling or personal development, then you may even find it kind of cringy or be judging me as I say this. But what it actually does is it names the traps before they appear. You are priming your brain to recognize these things before they show up. And over time, you're going to end up effortlessly embodying these things. Your goal is not to eliminate the emotion altogether. Your goal is to build awareness for it so you can catch it before the impulse kicks in. So there it is, the 3 steps. Step 1, create an emotional trading diary that not only tracks the trade that you took, but how you felt and any behaviors you took that were influenced by your emotions. Step 2, start tracking your trading behavior in relation to your period, so you know when you're more likely to be overconfident and more likely to make behaviors based on fear. Step 3, create a trading alter ego. So create a completely separate identity or version of yourself that is the trader you're trying to become. And then to wrap it all up, create some affirmations that specifically tackle the emotional trading behaviors that you're most likely falling victim to. None of these require you to have more trading skill or more capital or a better strategy. All you're doing is developing the self-awareness so that you can catch yourself before you make impulsive trading moves. And if you want to know more about mastering your emotions, I talk more about this in my private community, which you can find in the link in the description below. And I also want to say something before I go. The fact that you are trading emotionally is not something you should beat yourself up over. It doesn't mean you're a bad trader. It doesn't mean that you're a woman and women are more emotional, so you're just not ever going to be as good at trading compared to men. And it's definitely not proof that you are not cut out for this. It's proof that you care, and it's proof that you are excited and committed enough to want to continue. It's proof that you care about trading. It's proof that you care about your goals. Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't be okay with making the same mistakes over and over again, as silly as they may be. The goal is never to feel nothing when you trade, because at the end of the day, we are watching our money go up and down and fluctuate every single second. And that's not easy. That's a different kind of stress that most people will never understand. So the goal isn't to completely become a robot and never feel any emotion at all, because that would be impossible. The goal is to build a system that works with how you actually feel, rather than pretending that those feelings don't exist and trying to work through them with just more practice trading. So what I want you to do is to drop a comment below and let me know, what part of emotional trading do you struggle with the most? Is it revenge trading? Is it taking setups that aren't really justified? Is it you keep moving your stop loss? Is it use too big of a risk size because you want to chase bigger profits? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.